Hello, and welcome to another episode of the UGH podcast. Today, we are talking about attachment theory. We also have our special friend, Gemma, who you may recognize from some of the previous episodes, to join us in this conversation. I know the boys had a lot of fun. We've been trying this kind of new format where we just ask less questions and just have more of a spitball dialogue, which I think a lot of us really enjoyed. We really hope that you enjoyed this perspective and maybe learn something new about yourselves or learn something about relationships and attachment theory. Please keep in mind that none of us are actually proficient, top educated psychologists. We're just three dudes on a casting couch talking about stuff. So just take whatever we say as opinion as opposed to fact, and we really hope that you enjoy today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.
Chocolate rain.
Let's pretend the last.
Hey, welcome back to UJH podcast to another episode. Woo! We have a special guest, Gemma. Gemma, introduce yourself.
My name is Gemma. I have no type of social media to kind of flex right now. I'm gonna be a famous TikToker and then I'll flex it on here. Peace.
Is it at underscore and Gemma? Something like that.
At underscore best TikTok dancer in the world.
Street dancer, head spinner in the club. That's why he's wearing a bucket hat. Anyways, that's all you need to know. But
That's it.
But
Today we're talking about attachment styles, attachment theory, relationships, and stuff. So, before we get in, I just kind of go through the educational part of it. I'm gonna try to be short because this is not.
I think we already got that part.
No, we didn't.
I just restarted it, man. But I don't want this to turn into a university lecture because I remember learning about this and I fell asleep, but also I can't remember it. So, with attachment theory, this is a classical theory by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth that identified 4 types of attachment. I think it's actually Mary Ainsworth that actually did the attachment style, and her colleague Mary Main, same name but it's a different last name. So there's 4 types of attachment style. One of them is secure and the other is insecure. So secure is, and that's arguably the one that I think most people are trying to achieve. Basically, secure people tend to have long-lasting relationships, good self-esteem, they're good at sharing their feelings, and they're very good at reaching out for support. I think most people kind of associate this with this is a green flag kind of person, and this is the quote-unquote the morally superior category that you want to be in, but we'll talk about that. The controversy with that. The next one is avoidant or dismissive, anxious avoidant. So for these people, they have a hard time kind of opening up to people. So they tend to be a lot closed off, have a hard time sharing their feelings, hard time reaching out to people. Maybe they have a hard time initiating conversation and actually building actual intimate relationships with other people. The third one is anxious, otherwise known as preoccupied or anxious ambivalent. These people are a lot more needy. They're very clingy. They have feelings that a lot of the people that they love don't like them, that everyone hates them. They feel that, they have feelings of abandonment. So every time maybe a partner leaves them, they tend to have feelings of despair and sadness. The last one, which was adopted by, another category that was kind of created by Mary May, not Mary Ainsworth, is disorganized, which basically is a mix of avoidant and anxious. So this is they want to get close to someone, but they're very scared of sharing their feelings. So they have abandonment issues, but also they have a hard time sharing what they feel. And now there is kind of a little bit of a nuance to this conversation of trying to talk about how we categorize humans. First of all, these are 4 categories. There's so many humans in the world, depending on what culture, religion, what you believe in. So kind of putting people into these boxes is a little problematic because there's so many people with different temperaments and personalities. So you kind of use these boxes as a way of understanding yourself, which one fits you the most. Secondly, it's very easy to see as secure as the green flag and insecure as the red flag, and kind of these are toxic people. You need to cut all the toxic people in your life. But there's a conversation of do people have the capacity to change, or are you trying to protect your peace, right? So a lot of times with attachment styles, your attachment style can change as a child, from going from child to an adult, depending on your experience. Do you have healthy relationships, or did you have very toxic relationships growing up? Are you trusting people, or do you have a hard time opening up to people? It all depends on your experience as a human being. With that being said, one of the questions I want to ask you guys is basically a question about how you handle someone with a different attachment style, and what's the best way of handling. So this question is, let's say you're dating someone and you love them very much. You're dating them for maybe a year, 2 years perhaps, and you notice that every time you try to spend time without them, whether that's like you want to hang out time with the boys, or you want to do overtime in your workplace, or you want to do like cocaine with your coworker, whatever. Like, they tend to be very angry at you, right? They blow up your phone. They antagonize you. The moment you get home, like they're just like, "Fuck you, men are trash. They're the root of all evil," and they're like, "Fuck you, you're a piece of shit," and like, like they unload all their anger and resentment onto you. First question is, what do you think is the best way to respond? And second question, how would you have actually responded, and how do you think you would have responded?
Okay. I'll go again first.
Yeah, of course. I got you, bro.
So, just a little. So like, yeah, I was talking to these guys earlier about like how I was like to prep for this episode. I was taking like quizzes and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed quizzes and astrology quizzes. And,
Yeah, the 60 personalities.
yeah. The INTFP or something like that.
Yeah, the Enneagram. Whatever. Yeah.
The Milky Way quiz.
Which potato are you at BuzzFeed?
But anyways, I took the quiz and it came out as anxious. And I think I do agree with that. I do find myself very clingy and putting people on a pedestal. Like that was like one of the main points in the blurb is that like you put people on a pedestal and you don't like really value yourself more than the other person. Because I know like in Avoidant, like you're like a lone wolf. You're like very like independent. Whereas like
I don't need no man.
Exactly.
You thought I was feeling you?
Whereas like anxious is more like you like to depend on people. And you just can't help but depend on people. And obviously that comes from like your upbringing and temperament and stuff like that. But I do agree that I'm a very like anxious attachment style type of person where I'm very like clingy and I'm always like questioning if I'm putting up too much effort for this person, if like I'm not showing them enough love, and I'm always constantly doubting myself. Like I was supposed to hang out with Vince and homie one time, and like but it was like our homie Flores' last day in Calgary, and it was like, yeah, you guys know Flores, he's been on the podcast before, but I was like, oh fuck, okay, so do I still go on this hangout or whatever? And then I ended up canceling because it's just like Flores isn't in town that often, and I can just see these guys whenever I want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I just felt so guilty. I was like, fuck, I don't like this.
Feel like a bad person for like a man, like a yeah.
Mm-hmm. So like pertaining to this question, I think like my kind of like my first thought would be like, oh, like say sorry, apologize, and like do everything in your power to like make them happy or make them like not be angry at you. You know what I mean? And that's what that's like the kind of the first thing that I would do, especially before, because I didn't really like think with my head often. I thought with my other head.
I was gonna say the same joke and you beat me to it.
But
Two heads are better than one.
Oh.
but yeah.
I like
but
that.
now, like if I think of now, probably the best course of action I would take, me being like trying to be a more secure attachment style person, is to really think about it and come back to it later. Like go on my said like whatever I need to do, like if it's hanging out with the boys, doing coke with my coworkers or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, and then do what I need, and then come back home and talk about it, because like I think that like also at the same time you need as just a person in general who has relationships in their life, you also need to prioritize other relationships and help nurture the other ones.
Yeah.
So it's like I think in a sense like going to still like supplement those relationships, hanging out with friends or like doing OT at work, like you're working on those ones, and then come back and kind of work on this one, because I feel like if you guys are in a relationship that way, then I just feel like, setting boundaries would just be such a good thing in this situation. Like just coming back to it and being like, hey, like, I understand that you're like frustrated when like I'm kind of doing other stuff, but you gotta understand that like this and that, yada, 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 go into like the details and the grittiness of it. But yeah, I think that's like ideal action. But the action I really would take, probably like right away, would probably apologize. Like I'd be like, I'm sorry for like spending time with the boys.
And that's the thing, like just being honest with yourself about that, because it's like ideally you want to believe that you know how to handle every situation, but when you're actually not like after the conversation, you're like, fuck, maybe I didn't handle that the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So like, yeah, the first part of this question, I guess, is like what I would do. and similar to Ronald, I'll talk about like my self-diagnosis of what attachment style I am. So I actually like watched a couple of videos preparing for this like 10 minutes before.
Oh yeah,
He's ready.
I'm ready, I swear.
I know myself. Was it?
I did my research.
You know, there was like, I'm so much of a scientist myself. You know, or like,
Yeah.
like when did you become a master neurophysicist? Like, oh, yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's go ahead.
So like, given like the history of how I've reacted to issues in the past, I'm very much of like Ronald. I'm very much of like an anxious attachment style. One of the characteristics that's common within like anxious attachment style people is they want to be fixers. So they want to like, okay, let's like fix this right away. Like, yeah, like I can fix her, I can fix him. Like let's fix this right away. We can talk it out. Like very impatient people, very like, you know, let's sit down and fucking solve this problem.
My big boy
Lawrence
boots.
is cheering
you
What,
know.
my big boy boots?
Yeah.
Lawrence is cheering in the back, bro.
Yeah, so probably like I'm just trying to like imagine like the situation. I would probably be like if someone were to like pop off on me for like spending time with my friends, I would probably react very like angrily. I would be like, first I would try to act mature. I would be like, okay, well, you know what, let's talk it out. And then like once we're there, I would be like, you fucking
Yeah, like get in the car type thing, bro. It's like you guys leave the close the car and start angrily driving.
like I wouldn't like be young, but I would be like very assertive on like
Your stance.
my position. Like,
Yeah.
I need my personal space, and you know, I would apologize as well, probably. Yeah, that's kind of like
I
a
feel like that's just,
universal
like,
thing.
for like attachment, like avoidant. Sorry, not anxious, like attachment people. Like your first instinct is to say sorry.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't even matter if you were in the wrong or not.
Yeah.
You're just like, I'm sorry.
yeah, but I think my response would be like, sorry, blah blah blah. But yeah, like I would like explain mine and like, and then be like, okay, what's your point of view? And then they wouldn't speak because they're so like offended or shocked or because
Yeah.
I just like
Because you just popped off.
I just popped off like that, right? So I don't know,
We
like
cry together, basically.
exactly. Yeah, but I think the ideal way is as adults,
Yeah.
people need to. Well, I mean, some people might not be adults watching this, but like as like mature people who are in relationships, like the
Well, I mean, like young people can learn from this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. the ideal
Shout out
way
to
to
my
do it
kids.
is like have a discussion. Also, you don't need to fix things right away.
Yeah.
You can like come back to it at a time. Like there's no harm in saying, hey, like I'm not there right now to, you know, fix this problem. Like it would be like not sincere of me to say, oh sorry, I'll do this next time, because my focus is not fully there. So if you guys can come together in like a neutral space and like talk like your problems and really ask the questions like, why are you upset that I'm spending time with my friends? Like, how does it make you feel? This is why I need to spend time with friends. Like, do you expect me to feel the same way when you like spend time with your friends? Like, really ask some like questions.
Listen.
And yeah, exactly. Like, listen to each other and understand like where that concern, insecurity is coming from, and try to solve it. So, but I feel like, you know, we're imperfect people. It's not
100%.
always gonna be like that. So
Always.
sometimes it's gonna be like a yelling match before you come to that
SmackDown
point.
versus Raw. You know?
SmackDown versus
Down,
Raw.
down.
TV.
Survivor Series.
5-star Fox
But yeah, Gemma, you can go ahead.
I actually want to add to what you said. I definitely agree with you. We're self-improving people, and I feel like we have to like kind of find a basis to like know what to improve on in a sense. But with like regarding that, I think it's kind of hard. I think a lot of people like find it very difficult to kind of self-reflect and find a way to like find a way to like kind of see if it's their problem or it's their fault, or like kind of figure that out. So it's kind of hard. It's a very tricky situation, honestly, from like my experience. I think it also depends on like so many factors. It depends on like what the argument is. It depends on like who the person is.
Yeah.
And like so much factors. I feel like with everything, it's just really hard. It's just really hard to respond, obviously, and people act out of emotion compared to like reason.
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah.
We're emotional creatures. That's
We're
not really
definitely-
locked around gender. Just if you're, we think
We think
with
like
our
that,
heads.
We're definitely emotional people, and like from my experience, I personally have like no kind of experience towards this to some extent, as like not that I can think of, in anyways. But generally, yeah, I don't have any kind of experience. I just feel like I'd kind of act more so anxious, kind of like Kuya. Yours was anxious, right? Was it not anxious, right?
So like,
As like a personality type.
Out of the four, bro, like what do you think you are? Like self-diagnose yourself right now, even though you're not certified to.
We'll do that later because I haven't.
Honestly, okay.
Oh, okay.
Honestly though, but
Maybe
I'll say Mary Main for now. Really thinking
The
about it.
disorganized, like both
A little bit both.
anxious, but have a hard time.
Yeah, I kind of like living life on like just a chill side, like go with the flow type thing. So I feel like kind of Mary Main would kind of fit me. Disorganized, kind of a bit of a combination of both anxious, avoidance style. Kind of crave attention. I don't, like
A little bit of everything,
A little bit of everything.
2 scoops on your Edo.
2 scoops of sauce.
like no napkins. Depends on how messy I want to get.
Bro. You're talking about attachment styles, bro. This guy just wants chaos.
Not the beauty.
I
of
want
dialogue.
problems, not peace.
I think it's the beauty of dialogue. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I have been in this situation before. Not me as ugly as described it, but just the idea of like trying to kind of invest in my own like well-being and like what I want, but also trying to meet the needs of someone else, right? I'm thinking about how I handled it when I was younger because I would just start pulling out all the logical fallacies of their argument and say that this is stupid, like it doesn't make any sense. Why would you say that? That doesn't make any sense. Because I just when I was young, I just did not give a fuck. Like I literally was like very unapologetic with like how I saw things. But a lot of times, like when handling arguments, like a lot of times it's not about like who's right, who's wrong, even if sometimes it feels that way. It's about what are we actually upset about? What do we as people need to work on, and how do we mediate this conflict? It definitely helps when you have someone that's willing to mediate. Mm-hmm. When you have someone who is like actively antagonizing you, it's dude, like you can try to apologize all you want, and you can try to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll do this better, and you can try to improve. But at the end of the day, it's like one of those things where like, whoa, like no matter what I do, it almost seems like it's not enough. I remember having this conversation with like us, like at like our friend's house about like when it comes to forgiveness and fixing your behavior, where like it takes 2 to tango. So if someone wrongs someone else, if one person forgives them but the other person doesn't really improve in their behavior, then at that point it's kind of enabling that behavior. Mm-hmm. But if someone like refuses to forgive and that person actually actively trying to improve and like while actually giving the choice and agency to actually improve, then at that point there's no point, because no matter what they do, they'll never be good enough to receive that forgiveness, right? So it takes 2 to tango when it comes to relationships. Mm-hmm. Knowing myself and how I would respond, I think in the past, definitely very, very immaturely, like I would just, point out things that just don't make sense in the argument and like kind of just like be a smart ass and be even more petty at a point. But I definitely can say confidently that I think even like looking at my recent relationship is that how I would be able to handle situations where listen first, and then like think about what they said and then respond. Because I feel like a lot of times before, when I would listen, I would already have a response in my head ready. But instead, just kind of listen, force myself to pause, and then be like, okay, what are they saying? What are they actually saying? Because like language is like only one part of communication. There's also body language and like paraverbal communication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And trying to figure out why they are hurt. And also trying to be also conscious about how I'm feeling as well. Because, like, yeah, I think having that argument all the time, like, wanting to spend time on, like, what else makes you happy, right? Because as much as people won't like to admit, like, a relationship's not the only thing that makes you happy, right? There's many things you can get happiness from, and, what is that, right? Yep. And so when you have someone who is, like, dependent on, like, you for that happiness, it's kind of like frustrating to handle, because it's like, like it's not that I don't love you, it's just that like I would like to go home, I would like to see my friends, because those relationships are also just as important, and like I only have 100% of my energy to give, right? And it's like when someone is like in that headspace, I think one of the things you can do is definitely just taking a pause, waiting for them to calm down, because I think trying to reason with someone who's kind of escalated it's kind of just like talking to a wall. You're talking to a brick at that point. So honestly, just trying to make sure that you're listening, but also being recognized that you also have feelings and they have feelings, and now it's just a bunch of two humans having feelings yelling at each other. It's not you versus them. It's like you guys versus the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I see it, and I think I don't know. That's just like the way I think. Ultimately, people should be able to mediate conflict, but you know, obviously that's a very hypothetical world. And
Just to add on that, like I think one of you guys referred to it earlier. That song "We Cried Together,"
Oh,
Kendrick
yeah.
Lamar. It's exactly like that, right? Like people just or two people just like trying to get the final say, final word.
Straight gabbing, bro.
Like and what you said, it's like taking pauses. It seems unnatural, but it's actually really valuable.
Yo, it helps.
Because like
yeah.
you sometimes yeah, I do agree. Sometimes I already have like a response like loaded, right? Or like I just like trying to okay.
Yeah, whatever response
Okay,
like that,
okay,
yourself.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, I got you.
Yeah, so like that really helps because even though it feels unnatural, like
Trapping.
you're talking right, and then I'm just like sitting there like yeah, but you're taking time to process what they actually said, and like you know what they actually mean, and now you get to say your piece, right? So it's like and approaching each problem as a team rather than like oh you know this person you know just not working with me like he's or he or she is like a fucking avoidant. They don't want to.
Yeah, you start secondizing.
Yeah,
shit
like
on
like
them. Yeah.
classifying people based on like it.
Mhm.
I also saw in that video that I watched 10 minutes prior to this
go.
Let's go.
that like, and I think you alluded to it as well. Like we shouldn't like be or identify with like what we identify as like our attachment style.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
unlike
broken, and I will never be fixed. I'm so broken.
unlike
Hey, yo.
unlike astrology signs, we shouldn't identify with like you know I'm an avoidant. I have these problems. I'm anxious. I have these problems. It's like they're just characteristics, right? They're not your identity, and you can always change. People are you know you can always change. You know you can just put the work in, but you know it's almost like if you identify as that, it validates it.
What you believe in.
It validates like that you won't work on it because like this is just who I am. I feel like that applies to a lot of things too, like that this is just who I am thing.
Yeah.
I know that this kind of off topic from the podcast, but like
No, but that's a
made
very
that-
valuable
It's,
conversation.
Yeah.
it's ironic
It's a valuable
though.
conversation.
It's ironic though, because like stuff like that sounds so corny, but it's so true.
Yeah.
It's the corny stuff that's always true like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Honestly.
yeah, yeah. No, that's all I had to add to your.
No, I think that's
Point.
a very good point to bring up because I think a lot of people, especially like, I don't know if it's just my perception, but a lot of times when I look at social media and like mental health TikTok and like everyone's broken, everyone needs to be healed, and I'm like, ugh, like you know, it's
Look at
like
crystals.
no shit like that where it's like, yo, okay, like I think having a conversation about mental health is very important, but just to like really. When you paint yourself as someone who's broken, you just solidify that idea in your head, and you kind of we talk about self-fulfilling prophecies and like how that kind of works, and like
Yeah,
when you believe in something, you kind of just facilitate like even more.
It's a positive and negative thing, it's not?
Yeah, well, yeah, the thing because you can use it for good or you can use it
Yeah.
for evil. Like you know, if you say you're like a smart academic person, like a lot of times you will put yourself in situations where like you're constantly challenged academically and try to you know, whatever. But if you're constantly like putting yourself in a negative connotation and like you know the power of language of like painting yourself in like a bad light of like oh I'm a bad person or like oh I'm just broken like oh no one will ever love me, then you really do put yourself, you dig yourself a grave. It's a self-sabotaging thing that I think a lot of people need to kind of just be aware of, because I think that's like kind of my like my 2 cents when it comes to people who are anxious or people who are avoidant. It's like yes, like you can acknowledge that like yeah there are some things that maybe you don't appreciate, you're not fond of, but understand that the human part and then the behavior, right? That these are 2 separate things, right?
Yeah.
There's a human and there's a behavior part of trying to figure out like, hey, like I don't appreciate when I did this, like I don't like how I handled this, and being very critical about that, and actually being like, you know, actually allowing yourself to have feelings of guilt and shame, just actually like you know processing emotions so that you're able to do better in the future. But when you're someone who's kind of just like using your past experience to be like, oh, I'm a shitty person, I'm bad, fuck me, right? Then that's when it's like, yo, man, like at that point, it's actually true now. It actually becomes true. Like
you're just digging your own grave at that point. It's
Because
like,
I was actually thinking about this the last time you were talking about self-fulfilling prophecies. It's like when you kind of go through that thought process, like say you come up to an obstacle or something that you have to overcome, you're gonna have a litany of options that you think of, and like but like if you're thinking a specific way, you're obviously going to lean towards the one that you like already think of yourself. So if it's like if you're thinking of options like, oh, say you're like a smart economic person. Let's use a positive example for once. Say like you're a smart economic person and like you're like, okay, I need to save for a house. Like, what am I gonna do? What expenses am I gonna cut? Like, what things am I gonna do to kind of fulfill that goal, right?
Yep.
And if I'm a smart economic person, the first one is gonna be like, okay, like let's cut out like wasteful spending. Like, let's cut my clothing budget. Let's cut like when I like.
No more Timbs.
Let's take cut
No
out the
more
ones like
Timbs.
no more drip. I can I can make coffee at home type.
Yeah.
Things. But it's like if you're a lavish spender or like you're just someone who just like likes to spend his money. Obviously, the first thing you're gonna do is like, I won't be able to save for a house because I
can't help myself.
I can't help myself. I just have no financial literacy. Not necessarily you don't have any financial literacy. You're just like, I just love spending money.
Yeah, I don't have any self.
You
Yeah.
take away your agency by doing that. You're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I don't have the chance to improve. Yeah.
Like and again, like you did think about like, okay, like if I just cut out my wasteful spending, then I would. But then you're just like you already got yourself down because you're not even thinking about that option in the first place. Because you're like, yo, I'm already gonna spend money. I'm just gonna keep spending money. Like, what's the point of saving it?
Yeah. Just like solidifying your own beliefs, because like, I guess the belief of the self is like very dangerous because like, there's how other people perceive you, and that's how you perceive yourself. And like, I was talking this about like with my girlfriend. She was saying how like sometimes she doesn't really have like positive perception of herself, so she assumes that other people don't have a positive perception of herself. And I was like, and I kind of like would stop her, and I was like, okay, but you understand that you are very good at mediating, and I'm like, when people see both of us, they're more likely talk to you than talk to me because I'm more confrontational. Like I tend to.
It's because you're an angry Aries.
Yeah, it's because I'm an angry Aries, right? Like I tend to tell people how stupid they are and then prove how stupid they are instead of actually trying to listen, right? But you have always been the person that's like down to listen first before speaking, right? But then she's like, oh, but I just feel like I just do that because I don't want to upset them. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe that is a reason, right? Yeah. But you understand like how your perception kind of like clouds your judgment of how other people perceive you, right? You can think that all your friends hate you, but like at the end of the day, it's like, is that actually how they feel, or is it how that you feel about yourself, and you're kind of projecting on like what everyone else feels about you? You know what I mean? Because like, especially like when we go out in public, like I think I always argue about it as like, yeah, like she keeps saying like, oh, like I feel like you're very social and charismatic. I was like, yes, sometimes, but I also tend to get on people's nerves because I just don't give a fuck a lot of times, which like tends to get me in trouble. It's something I'm working on, but like what I appreciate is that you actually do value other people, not necessarily in the people pleasing way, but in a way where it's like, yo, like I need to be more mindful about the other people, like in their feelings. You know what I mean? Yep. So, yeah, like one of the things where it's like, if you honestly believe that people don't like you, then like, and you don't actually engage in dialogue, you're gonna really believe that, and you're actually just you're just digging yourself a grave. You're not really giving people a chance to actually like, and your perception of other people, it's like kind of just, like, oh, they don't like me, and
yeah. Each action is gonna be like, when you're confronted with like that situation where you're at a function or something, right? You're like, oh, yeah, like, these people want to talk to me. Like, you're gonna be like, oh, in the back of your head, you're like, oh, these people don't like me. Like, I'm not gonna make conversation with them. Yeah. Like you might
I'm social awkward or something.
You're already digging yourself out.
Yeah, that might not be your intention in the moment, but like you've already like trained yourself.
Set you up for failure.
Yeah. That could be a thought process. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's definitely a big thing. Yeah.
No, I totally forgot what else I was gonna say. Oh, I was gonna say just a side note on that spending thing. Yeah. I thought of it, but I forgot to mention. No more spending money on clothes designed by Big Kuya from Milk Run.
No, please, no.
Please. No, go support local, bro. Go support the fam.
To pay my bills, please.
Chill.
Hit up fire sale. Hit up Milk Run at Cross Iron Mills.
Okay, I'll ask the next question.
You can see
okay,
it.
so this one actually, I think Jimbo probably has a lot to say about this, but
Okay.
how do you feel about the term red flags, or cut all the toxic people out of your life? Do you feel like it makes people out to be discardable, or do you see it as like protecting your peace? And do you think that people have a chance to change for the better?
Hot seats.
Should I say the negative and the positive?
I need you just to be honest, raw with your feelings. Yo,
I'll be completely honest then. Okay.
Just
I
say.
think the people who like say that, like, you know, like it's such a loose term nowadays. Like red flag is such a loose term.
Oh,
It's such a loose term. Before red flags is like, oh, it used to be toxic and this. Now and everyone's like, oh, this guy doesn't fucking eat Oreos.
No.
Oh, it's a red flag. Like, you know what I mean? It's like
no, like exactly. Like people are like
Yeah.
red flags. Oh, he's Filipino. That's a red
yeah,
flag.
like literally, it's just I'm so small.
He's 5'7", bro.
That's okay.
Exactly 5'7".
Yeah.
That's a red
Yeah,
flag.
I can't control my height, but sorry, I'm 5'7".
Yeah,
I'm building
yeah.
a Goomba. Sorry, it's not my problem. But yeah, sorry. But yeah, and like especially the one thing too. What do you say? Call toxic people out of your life.
Yeah.
Like that sounds like such a toxic thing to say. Like that sounds like a self inflicting thing. Like, aren't you the toxic person in that sense? Technically speaking, because why are you like?
Yo, speak your
Like,
shit,
I
bro.
don't know,
Speak your
I'm
shit.
thinking. I'm really thinking about it like that. Like some people, like sometimes, yes, you need to protect your peace. Maybe there's like toxic people in your life. Could be family, friends, all that stuff. But man, I feel like with like most of this stuff, it's all kind of like bullshit, bro. Like everyone that's just saying it is just saying it to like sound like trendy or cool.
Yeah.
I feel like there's nothing about protecting your peace or nothing about like kind of doing better for yourself. Like most of the time,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes it's just like either a trend or just something just to like lighten the mood for themselves. I don't even know.
Yeah, justify their actions.
Justify their actions. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides that, yeah. I mean,
I'm on the same boat. Yeah, like
Yeah.
because I mean, as someone who actually has to cut people out of their life, like that honestly came from a combination of actually trying to mediate it and try to talk some sense into someone else, and then not working and be like, yo, you know, I gave them the tool, I gave them the agency to change, but they're obviously not changing.
mm,
So like I've done my part. I can't do like I can't pull someone's hand, and like, you know, I
100%.
can't parent someone, because yeah, like as I kind of like talk to this new generation of people, like kind of this hyper individuality of like, you know, and I talk about this about like you don't owe anyone anything. Like I think that's like a very situational thing where it's like that's when you're dealing with someone who's entitled, like, you know, if someone's like trying to count favors, or someone who's like, you know, like, you know, you're my friend, you're supposed to do this, right? That's kind of like where that kind of you don't owe anyone anything comes from, right? But yeah, I think a lot of times in my experience when I see people like, oh, cut all the toxic people in life, I'm like, you are that toxic person though. Like you are the person that is to be cut, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, like in this podcast, we talk about the idea of redemption, like who, you know, the conversation of who has the chance of being redeemable or whatever. And also there's a limit of like what someone can do. Yeah. But like, I think I find a lot of people in this, and especially in this dating age, I don't know, like of Tinder or whatever, is like, you know, they're like, they see people as commodities, right?
Yeah.
Pros, cons, nope, yes, right? Where it's like, yo, we're actually treating each other like products, and then we're all lonely, and they're like, oh, like why do I feel so lonely, and like why my relationship sucks so bad? It's like, well, welcome to capitalism, baby, where we treat each other like products, right? So like, you know what I mean? Like it's like, yo, like
it's right.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's actually true.
yo,
I didn't
like
think about it like that, but it's actually true. Yeah.
it's like it's kind of a fucked up way of looking at things, and like and I always have engage in dialogue of like, you know, when it comes to viewing people and like how to value someone else besides of this or this, right? Because like, you know, I've had a lot of friends that a lot of Latino friends actually, they're like, yeah, man, I like Asian women. I'm like, cool, but what if like one day they just turn black? Would you still love them the same? You know what I mean? Kind of throwing them in the spot, like, you know what I mean? Like, but yo, that's the question you ask someone to like really fuck up their morals, right? Like, because like a lot of people kind of see like, oh, like we have this, like, oh, he's 6 feet, right? Like, oh, she's bad, like, oh, she got a fat ass, right? Like, oh, like, you know what I mean? But it's like, and like, you know, I obviously like we all have our preferences of physical appearance, like we can't deny, like obviously we all have preferences, right? And honestly, like that's just something that like I honestly believe it's a biological component. Like obviously, there's some things you just kind of like or not.
You just like.
But like just the value of people, because like we're talking about attachment theory and like relationships, and like seeing how the younger generation is so like, you know, just like,
Oh, she's bad.
this is good, this is bad. And it's like, yo, man, you gotta give someone a chance, man.
Yeah.
What's that?
I feel like
what's that saying too?
Yeah. Like. Oh yeah.
No, I was gonna say there's a saying too. Trying to think of it. You can't have the good without the bad. It's like that thing. That's literally what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I
Yeah.
feel like it's not as cookie cutter as everyone like makes it to seem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, like when you date someone, I just don't think it's like you just want all the good. Like that just incentivizes people to lie to you and like show like
True.
what the undesirable traits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like
All men lie.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
well, it's because like if I don't, I'm not loved. You know what I mean?
exactly.
Not to justify like
Not-
lying.
not-
yeah.
not to
Not to justify it too, but you know, if you're
But,
you
like,
put yourself in that situation.
It's, I think for a lot of our viewers that have kind of gone through the like the Tinder like online dating like roulette. Like myself personally, like it just felt like again, it does feel like you're a product, but I feel like a lot of people just like don't see them as like humans in the end, like their capability to change and their the acceptance of the cons as well, right? It's like everyone just sees the pros, and then like 2-3 years later, they realize like, oh, like there's some uncompromising traits that like this person has been hiding from me, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like nowadays, especially like in terms of like attachment theory and like, all this stuff, when people come like, especially when like say like you're an anxious meeting an avoidant, I think like a lot of people tend to stray away from that because it's like that independent person would be like, oh, like I don't need no mans, but like it would be nice to have someone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like clingy is like, oh fuck, like why doesn't he or she like me because of this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's very, especially in terms of like insecure attachment styles. And I'm not saying that they're red flags at all. I'm just saying it's a little bit more difficult for people who have those insecure attachment styles, whether it be the avoidant, like the anxious or the disorganized, right? It's a little bit tougher for them to justify like dating in this age because it's like if you're the clingy person, you'll always doubt if they like you through a computer screen or a phone screen, right? Or as like avoidant, it's like no one will ever be good enough for you, or if they are, they might be a bot, right?
An NPC.
Yeah,
NPC.
yeah. And then like, and then.
Yes, I believe in astrology.
No, it's the lady whoever does the TikTok voice.
Oh yeah. And then
Oh,
and then I think it's even worse for disappointments because they have no idea what to look for because it's like like they're constantly in flux. They're constantly thinking about like they want that love, but they're not ready to open up. And it's like I feel like dating apps is the worst type for those type of people. For that type of attachment style. Sorry. And I was reading a couple articles, doing my research. You may not totally categorize with one attachment style. Like you may like bleed into many others. Ronald and Jason said that that if you're clingy, you're anxious attachment style.
He's an Aries.
Yeah. That means I'll only ever be an anxious attachment style. It's like no, like I think that certain aspects of your attachment style can be secure. Like you can have when it comes to certain situations or certain scenarios, or even like certain aspects of your life, you can be very secure. But you can also be very anxious or avoidant or disorganized in whatever like other aspects, right? And it also applies to platonic relationships as well.
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
think I'm a very anxious like just person in general. But like for my platonic, I'm very very anxious. I'm always constantly thinking like, how can I like make my friends better friends? Like, how can I be a better friend to my friends?
Yeah.
And it's like, not that I only realize I'm already a good friend to a lot of my friends, right?
Yeah, you're the best in the group.
Yeah, I'm the best in the group.
No,
But like, yeah, it's just like you're always kind of thinking about that. But anyways, I think in terms of this, coming back to the question, we went on a super big tangent, but I think that if you're the common denominator among like, oh, like I need to cut all these people off. Like if you're cutting all these people off, the common denominator is you.
Yeah.
So you might be. I think you're the toxic one here.
Yeah.
Like if you're cutting all those people off, and it's like, oh, those people are toxic. These people are toxic. These people are toxic. Maybe it's just you.
Yeah.
Like, and not to attack you or anything, but if you do feel attacked, like maybe reevaluate.
Reflect,
like
self-reflection.
is it-
Take your hand.
Is it protecting your peace or your inability to change? Right. And like if you don't want to change the way that you're thinking, then by all means, like that's cool. But I think there also comes to a point where it's like some groups or some friend groups or some people who you are either platonically or romantically involved in are redeemable.
Yeah.
Obviously, to which extent is up to you. But I think being a little bit more flexible, especially in terms of like attachment styles and stuff like that, I think it just builds healthier relationships if you're a little bit more flexible with those kind of things, because people do bring value to your life, right?
Yeah.
And just because you're not getting that expected value every single time doesn't mean they don't ever reach that level.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't. And just because if it goes down doesn't mean it doesn't come back up in value. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like we're not constantly always hanging out with our friends, and we're not always constantly loving our loved ones. Hence our relationship. So we're not constantly loving our loved ones at the same level all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Especially when you're cooked.
Yeah. I think like making it as cookie cutter as like once you see those red flags, once you cut all those toxic people out of your life, it's like what are you really left with? Like, what type of value are you left
Yeah,
with?
you get 9 cats. Like
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think it's protecting your peace. I think it's more so your inability to compromise.
I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
around
And that's just my opinion. You might disagree, but I do think that like you need people around you, and you need a support system at the very least. And I think that like, I'm a very like extroverted person, so I believe that the more people you have in your corner, the better you are, the better set you are in life.
Yeah, you don't want to burn like too many bridges in life.
Yeah.
Like for the littlest things that you consider red flags, because then you burn too many bridges. Like who else is gonna be there for you? You know.
Yeah, like who will also be in your corner when push comes to shove?
Like you may be avoidant. Say like you may be an avoidant person. Say like, oh, I don't like. I'm an independent. Like I don't need no man or woman or whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
But
Andrew Tate.
you are like as humans, we are top G. No, just kidding. We do not endorse Andrew Tate.
No, we actually.
Nah, according to some of our audience, apparently we do.
I hate that guy.
But like yeah, as like humans, we're societal people, right? So you can't just be independent all the time. Like it's not feasible. Like you can do it, but is your life gonna be fulfilling or happy? No, probably not. Most likely not. But yeah, like to touch on this question, like to preface my point, I'm gonna
Read the Bible verse.
yes, Isaiah 3.
As Jesus wept.
But yeah, like what you guys were talking about, I just remembered some lyrics from Nicki's song before, and this was a line. It's called
Don't.
Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj,
It's an Indonesian singer.
Indonesian singer. Yeah.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
Indonesian?
Yeah.
Shit.
So the lyric is,
And I can't.
ask your new lover what it's like to be given a real fighting chance before you wish her good riddance. So I feel like that kind of like applies to the Tinder meta nowadays, because it's like
The Tinder Meta.
because to relate it back to attachment styles, right?
Tier list?
On Tinder and all those dating apps, everyone is trying to present their ideal selves. Like everyone was like saying, okay, you can't use this picture, you can't use this picture, use this picture. You gotta use this description.
Use a picture
It's
of
like
dog.
everyone is trying to paint the best picture as possible on those websites or on those dating apps, and then when you find someone that you're like physically attracted to, and everyone on that app seems like they're in like the secure bracket, right? But then when you start to get to know them, their dot is gonna move like more to the anxious side. They might show more anxious traits or avoidant traits, stuff that you may not like, stuff that's different from their profile, and you may see as red flags, and then you're like,
And then they're racist. And like, fuck.
Okay, that is an actual red flag. Disclaimer: there are actual red flags.
Yeah, no. No.
Disclaimer though, some people it might be a kink though, depending.
Oh my
Depending.
god!
Disclaimer. I'm just kidding.
Stop.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just like, oh shit.
But yeah,
Sorry,
like
go on.
once they start showing those like anxious traits or fearful traits or avoidant traits, then you're like, oh, I don't like them anymore. Bye, next one, on to the next, and then you start swiping again. It's like,
So numbing, bro.
yeah, it's like what meaning is your life gonna get? You're like going through match after match trying to find that perfect secure person, when in reality everyone has a little bit of anxious, a little bit of avoidant, a little bit of fearful, and to make it work, you need time and you need to work together to make it work, and you can't expect everyone to be perfect.
It's like fast fashion, like
And
fast
yeah,
dating.
like what you guys are saying, like every little thing is a red flag now. Like he's Filipino, or he fucking spends too much time with his mom, or like he texts too fast, or he eats like this.
Double text.
Yeah,
or
he double texts,
it
or
could
he eats
literally
like
be
this.
anything.
Yeah, it could literally be anything. I'm like,
he wears
Oh,
Jordan.
brother.
Like it's so like superficial. and
superficial.
minuscule.
Yeah,
Like there's some people even like what do you call it? It's like Coca-Cola. I saw like one girl like say something on a podcast where it's like she saw like her significant other, like some guy she was like looking at, dating Coca-Cola, not dating, sorry, drinking Coca-Cola like twice in a row, and then she's like, yeah, that's a red flag. I just like cut him off.
What,
I'm like,
bro?
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's
It's like, is he a
it's
kid?
crazy nowadays,
Yeah,
man.
yo, everyone has different values, but the thing is, like, I guess you can kind of see how like values are taught sometimes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like you see people the way people see each other, and like how that's a kind of like a learned behavior.
Yeah.
Again, not justifying behavior, but just the idea of like how we teach others of how to value other people, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of times when it comes to relationships, I kind of talk about like loving someone unconditionally, but still having boundaries.
Oh,
Yeah, not
100%,
saying like,
100%.
I'll accept your flaws, but accept that they have flaws and
Yeah.
be willing to work on them,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a big difference. Because it's funny because like one of my coworkers actually got married to someone they met on Tinder, right? Because like
cool.
not to because obviously like we kind of just been shit talking Tinder, right? But
Yeah.
but you know like most people go on Tinder kind of there to fuck, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like an unspoken rule.
Yeah, yeah. Not to say that there are success stories from it. Like some of my homies are in long term relationships from Tinder, which is
Yeah. But like just to see how like your perception of like social media and like media in general and how we integrate people in media, how that kind of warps our perception of other people, right? Because she was kind of telling me how like literally she was just there for like just a booty call, right? Just like a dick appointment, right? But then she ended up actually liking this person a lot.
Yeah.
To the point where they actually got married. I'm like, oh wow, that's
That's cool.
such a
Success
like
story.
a Tinderella,
Cinderella
Cinderella story.
Cinderella
Like, shit,
story.
that's crazy. But like, and like again, like dating apps are just a way of meeting people. But I just want the audience to kind of be aware of like how that kind of
how
how that affects the way you think about people, right? Because
But there's a nitty gritty. We're just talking about the nitty gritty.
I think that like when it comes to dating apps like Hinge, Tinder, and stuff like
Christian
that.
Mingle,
Yeah.
Plenty of
you know
fish.
what I mean?
Grinder.
I think you guys need to understand that it's a tool. Like obviously it's meant to connect people, and I don't think it should be the end all be all.
Exactly.
I think that,
Yeah.
But see how it affects like
Yeah. It affects you. I think again it's like the self fulfilling prophecy. If you go onto Tinder looking to fuck,
You're gonna fuck.
You gotta feel it, yeah.
but I think that if you go into the mindset where and it's again it's the same thing. It's like if you go into the mindset where you're not going to take it too seriously, you're not going to find anything serious.
Yeah.
And like I think that when it comes like pertaining to attachment styles, I think that you use it as a tool to like get your foot in the door. But I don't think that you should just base it on the end all be all. I think that if you are trying to play this dating game, I think you should play it to your strengths. And so if dating apps aren't necessarily your forte, then I think that like you just gotta step back and reevaluate. Maybe go out and find more hobbies.
Yeah.
If you're that in person like type style character, meta person style, then like put yourself in situations that will best display that.
Yeah, I guess put yourself in a situation where you actually meet people, because like I know there are some people who are actually like finding love, but they're in their older generation and they can't do a Tinder. Like, no.
Yeah.
And I understand.
It's tough.
I understand,
It's
yeah,
tough.
because like even some of my friends who are on Tinder, I'm like, damn, like how do you do that every day? Like having to present yourself. You know what I mean? Like almost putting yourself out as an auction. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty dehumanizing a little bit sometimes. Not to say like it's necessarily a bad or good thing, but like honestly, there's some people who kind of just don't take it seriously, just there for like out. But yeah, just if you're someone who's trying to find like a healthy intimate relationship, kind of just understanding humans at the fundamental level that like not all people are perfect, not all people are bad, and not all people are bad out of their own free will. Kind of like I'm not again like there are some people who are actually choosing to be an asshole, and there's some people who like do have a lot of problems going at home, right? Because like just cutting out all the people in life like doesn't really solve anything. Like, are you just gonna run away from a battle, or are you actually gonna learn how to mediate?
I like that because like we're all human. We all have our flaws and problems that we're dealing with. No one is perfect. I would say like if you really find someone who it's come back to that 80-20 rule. Like they have a lot of good, but they have some bad. Everyone has some bad. That's fine. Give people a fighting chance. Like if you more often than not, if you show that like, hey, I want to work on this. Let's give us a chance. Like it most of the time it'll work out unless they're like super toxic and just like
be aware.
I feel like we always have to include this disclaimer because some people who and I'm not even gonna like some people like take our words kind of like out of context, but giving people a chance doesn't mean like enabling toxic behavior, enabling abusive behavior. You gotta lean on others or have that sense, to know when that situation is. And
Do you have the capacity,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and knowing when to step out. But if it's like a situation where it could potentially be healthy, I'm not saying like it's unhealthy already, but like it could be something good, then give it a chance. You don't know what could happen.
because I know a lot of people that kind of the mentality I see them like kind of jump into relationship and they're like, oh, why is it not working out? It's like, well, like
Did you give it a chance?
you give it a chance, yeah, because like, and obviously it's weird because obviously you don't want to judge them, but it's like, damn, like you got a new person like every month, like what the fuck? And obviously trying to have a conversation of like, yo, maybe it's not that, maybe it's just you, like like can you admit that, right?
Yeah.
And like it's hard to, because they need to admit that like, oh, okay, maybe like I'm not giving people a fighting chance to improve or whatever that improving looks like, right? Because I don't know, I guess I don't know, it's kind of like talking to younger people of this generation, I'm like, wow, like y'all kind of heartless, like
Yeah, y'all like, nah, like I would have noticed with the younger generation is y'all don't like. It's not that I don't think it's not that they lack compassion. It's just they're way more straight edge and blunt than like anyone else was before. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I just think it's a different culture. for
Yeah.
them. Like they're very like, if they don't like something, they don't like.
they don't
something.
like
Yeah.
something,
Yeah, like let's just use this as an example. If they don't like Filipinos, man,
Oh.
they don't like Filipinos, man. It's just like,
they're gonna stay.
yeah, I know.
We will take it to Jollibee, come on, that's a plus.
Or like, oh, if he's a dog person,
How can you hate dog people, man?
Come on, man.
Oh, the dog versus cat people.
Shout out to Bosco and Brownie.
Let's go.
Bosco
Am I? Flores cat. Let's go. Let's go.
And Peeps.
Yeah.
Yeah, PB, yeah.
Yeah. But
But yeah, I agree with Jason. Like it's different, 100%. With the
Yeah.
younger generation.
Yeah.
It's very different.
And the excuse they give is like it's just like that
It's
nowadays.
just
I'm
how
like,
it
what?
is. Yes.
Well,
Like-
if it was just like that, then
so who's
I
closed-minded now? Like,
Yeah.
me, the old timer, or you, the young fuck?
Fuck,
Like,
we sound old.
Between both, I definitely
Sound
agree with you.
fucking old.
You know what's funny about that though? I don't blame, and I know we're not blaming, but I'm just saying I don't blame them for like acting the way they act.
that's how it is around them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's social media. Social media
Yeah.
has
Social
taken
media.
so much of their time. Like, be honest, like compared in our time, I know we're old timers, but in our time, social media was not a thing. Like,
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I did not remember like
You're
going
trying to
crazy
like
on
download
Twitter.
something inappropriate and be on 4K and like.
Yeah,
No.
MSN
LimeWire,
Messenger, bro. LimeWire?
Messenger? Like,
LimeWire.
LimeWire?
and that was like when like our parents this might be off tangent, but like that was like the time when our parents would like restrict our screen time.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is ironic because there's
Yeah.
no screen time anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no screen time.
Yeah, literally, you'd be on a computer for an hour, like trying to download all your music in that 1 hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dial-up speed.
Yeah. And then those naughty videos, you know.
Like, just say it
It's
like
literally
that.
loading like as like pixel by pixel. It's like come on, please show the tit.
Getting grounded and playing Minesweeper too.
Yeah,
you know?
bro.
This might be another podcast topic, but like as Jim has said, they can't help it, right? Everything is online now.
Yeah.
And, like the influence of like the technology moving forward and stuff like that.
Actually,
But that's another episode.
That is another episode.
Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.
This is also a side note. Okay. All right, last question, or structured question. In most psychological research, they recommend that you don't self-diagnose yourself.
Even though we just did.
Even though we just did. Apply your learning to your own life and let it be done by a professional. That being said, what attachment style do you think you are? Are there behaviors of yourself that you are not fond of when in a relationship? Are there some that you are fond of? Okay, I was thinking about this question.
Yeah.
earlier.
It's a good question. Yeah, now you're prepared. Look
Yeah,
at the
there you go.
research.
I'm preparing.
I was thinking about this question so hard.
Oh,
I was
Mr.
like-
MHD, let's go.
So again, like I said earlier, I think I'm an anxious attachment style person. So like a couple qualities that I was reading is that they put people on a pedestal. They try to fix people.
Fixers.
They're very much like they don't. It's not that they don't have self-value. It's just they value other people over themselves.
Yeah.
They're very like sacrificial in that sense. They
Seppuku.
think
Honorable seppuku.
they think that they're not putting enough into their into the relationships that they're cultivating,
Yeah.
and among other things, right? And so, that being said, I think one of the pros that like I'm very good at is being very like nurturing towards a relationship. So
Mhm.
I love to put in time into my
Put in
relationships, whether it's spending quality time. Obviously, like you know that your love language is spending quality time, like to service and stuff like that. I love doing that to all of my like platonic and romantic. Like I love just investing in those relationships, almost to the point where I'm a little too clingy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like recently, this is really funny. But Jim and Ziad have been Jim and Zizo have been at my house like every single day. But it's
Oh,
just
let's go.
because like I just really want to like see them all the time and cultivate that relationship. And it's the same thing with my brother too. I've been spending a lot of time with my brother. And it's just
What are you doing to that, bro? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
it's just and for me and for me I think it's a pro because like I just really love cultivating a relationship, so I will take the time to do it. I think one of the cons that I have is I'm very self-sabotaging in a sense. So it's like when it comes to my relationships, so say I have to prioritize another relationship over another, or I have to kind of like do something that I'm not really comfortable with doing. It's very like uncomfortable for me, and I will self-sabotage myself to the point where it's like it gets to the last minute and I have to do like the worst possible option because I'm so afraid of disappointing so many people that I'll put it off until like I think about it at a better time. But like there's no better time, right? And I'm very like self-sabotaging in that sense where it's like, oh shit, like I really don't want to tell them that I can't hang out like at this date, or I don't really want to tell them that I'm uncomfortable with this, right? Because they're such a good friend, like like especially like okay, so I'll kind of open up about so recently we kind of had a falling out with a friend, and we all kind of we all kind of our friend group in general just kind of confronted him, and like me and Lawrence, I think me and Lawrence really do struggle with the same thing. We really love to see the good in people. So like when I was kind of going through it, I was like, man, like I gotta tell him like what my problem is, but also like I can't tell him because like he's such a good guy. Like he did this for me, or like he was nice to me in this sense, or like he did this for me. Like I will justify like not saying it because of like I'll put him on a pedestal overly, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like my pro. Like I just think that like people can't do any wrong because it's like, you know, like they're my friends.
Fix them.
Yeah, I can fix them. They're my friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's their responsibility to kind of do that. Like they're still benefiting me. You know? And yeah, I think that's like one of my biggest pros and cons. I'm a very loving person, and I love to give out that love, whether platonically or romantically. But also at the same time, I'm a very self-sabotaging person where I'll overly put you on a pedestal, and it's something like I'm continuing to work on and being a little bit more constructive, being like, yeah, you actually are being an asshole, so let me call you out on it. Right?
Yeah, it's like a double-ended dildo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Damn.
But I also gotta realize that like I do have value as well. So it's like if I need to prioritize a specific relationship or my own mental health, then I need to do that, and I need to risk disappointing some people. But it doesn't mean that they're gonna hate me at the end of the day, unless they're fucking weird.
Yeah, you can't please everyone, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, like I'm a huge people
People
pleaser.
pleaser.
Man.
Yeah,
Actually,
me too.
Yo, it's hard.
it's so.
You're a
tough,
huge
bro.
peepee?
Yeah, I'm a huge PP, bro. Even like before, like especially in dance, I was a big people pleaser. Like I just.
Damn, I'm gonna fight with everyone.
Like,
Fuck.
bro, no man, I loved keeping the peace. Like I did, like no one could ever do any wrong. It didn't matter how much.
Karen and I were talking about how like, you know, I think Ron's a really good meter. Like, yeah, I agree. I think he's really good at having the room when something's going down.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like I just I want to keep the peace, and I never like want to like just like disturb it. So it's like if two people are beefing, I'll be like, yo.
Yeah,
Go chill.
It's cool. Chill. I'll pull my dick if you guys see, buddy.
Yo, there's some doms. Come on, guys.
Yeah, let's get some dons, please.
Let's get some D spot.
I should show after this.
Let's get some D spot.
Oh.
But yeah, again, like I'm a very big people pleaser, and it's something that I'm working on, and it's actually something that I've been like seeing improvements in, because I've definitely like not necessarily cut people out of my life, but kind of like let bygones be bygones with a lot of things, and just like not gotten myself involved, and just left things unsaid, because it's just better to keep that peace and in that sort of situation than really bring it up again, because I just feel like if you're already happy and you're kind of doing your thing, and I'm happy doing my thing, then there's no reason for us to intersect anymore. Because it's like if we're not benefiting each other and if we're not doing anything like that, then like I think our time has come.
You just
And
gotta pull out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like the thing I struggled with the most because I was like, oh, like even in like romantic relationships or platonic relationships, I was like, oh, like I don't want to lose this person because my life is gonna change so much.
Scared
And
of
I
change.
was so afraid of that. And now it's just like, fuck it. My life is cool.
It is
I'm
what it
cool.
is.
I'm cool.
It is what it is.
It is what it
It was
is.
one of the biggest lessons I had.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like letting people go. I think
Let it go.
let it go. I'm so bad singing. I'm playing myself right now. That was something I actually kind of I was talking about with a coworker where I was like, yeah, because he was dating his girl for like at least like just like 3 months, and then he asked me like how long have you been dating your girl? I was like, oh, like 5 years, and like, he was like, holy shit, like damn, right? And then he asked me the question like, do you ever wish like you were single? And I was like, you know what, like I think of that all the time because he felt guilty that he was like, I don't know if this is the one, like I don't know, maybe we should stay single. And I was like, that's a question you're constantly get all the fucking time.
100%.
Because there are times where I'm like, I wish I got home. I didn't have to text anyone like, oh, hey, I'm home. Good night. I'm like, I'm trying to get home and fuck off. Like, not-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sleep. Yeah.
Home, I'm by myself. Just
yeah, like
This
please,
is
like
my
it's
me
not that I
time,
don't
yeah.
love you, but just can you just and you don't know how to articulate like, hey, can you fuck off because I'm tired? Like, how do you?
Just stop existing for a second.
Yeah, like how do you articulate like, hey, I don't want to see anyone. Leave me the fuck alone, but like you don't want to hurt their feelings, right? Yeah.
Is that a guy thing? I feel like is that not a guy?
No, I feel like
It's an anyone thing,
I think it's an anyone thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay, yeah, no.
I just feel like even with some of my
guess
even with
it
some
is.
of my like woman friends, like a lot of them value their like peace.
Yeah.
Time alone.
You thought I was feeling? No,
And like obviously like a lot of girls are like, oh like I love it when I spend time with my man. I love it when he's like super clingy and stuff like that. Or like but also at the same time I feel like there's like to an extent, people just need to have me time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and I
exactly.
think like being super dependent on someone else is just
It's
like,
not good.
not good, right? But like also I think at the same time I think us as like dudes just really struggle with like telling like that tough thing. You know what I mean? Like being like, hey,
You don't wanna hurt
like,
their feelings,
in like
you
a
don't
healthy way. Like you don't want to hurt their feelings, but like also at the same time, like you're just like, I just don't want to see anyone. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of do my own
my
thing.
social battery is down. Please, like,
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that too? Like thinking about it, like really think about what you said too. It's like it's a funny thing because I feel like with guys too, we're always told not to show our emotion, and that's like a part of it too. And it's also at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like we don't want to hurt people's emotions too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which is like really funny. It's like kind of like a little like.
oh, yo, I sorry, go ahead. No, you.
No, like you.
Because I was having a conversation with Karen about this too, where I was like, yo, like as much as I want to show my feelings, when I show my feelings, it feels like I escalate the situation anyways. Like I don't know, I was never taught how to actually regulate it in a healthy manner. Not, you know what I mean? So I'd rather just like suppress them than rather than feel them because I don't want to cause harm to anyone. Like you not saying like you could tell me like
Surprise.
oh like toxic masculinity, you need to feel your emotions, but like yo when like you are like when you're like when I see like when we enter arguments and like my girl is like dysregulating, she's kind of yelling or like maybe she's not yelling, but she's not.
She's upset.
Yeah, she's upset. She's upset, and like maybe she might say something that's like mean, or whatever. Like it's like okay, like it happens. But like if I were to do that, someone could easily be like, oh, that's a bad man. He's an abuser. It's like trying so hard not to seem like I don't want to seem like a bad person. That you rather just suppress your emotions because you don't want to harm the people around you.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Which is like, and that's why I'm always like, trying to teach men how to effectively, healthily navigate their emotions. Not enable behavior, but actually be able to cope and actually like express emotions in a healthy manner.
In a healthy manner.
Feeling what they feel, not enable behavior.
Exactly.
But like, that's what I'm saying. Where it's like, yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, we need to stop toxic masculinity. It's like, yeah, like obviously
How do
I
you do
agree
that?
with that, but it's a lot more nuanced. It's not exactly black and white as you think it is. Like,
Yeah, you can't just be like flip up your toxic switch.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like it takes time and like
it's
how do
erectile
you-
dysfunction.
how-
Come on, like I can't
how
just
do
do
you-
that. Like,
You gotta teach people.
yeah.
Touching on Jim's point and your point, like factoring the fact like men have been taught to suppress emotions, and we talked about it in episode 1, like breadwinner mentality and all that.
Yep.
Like, and connecting it back to like avoid like attachment styles, like are men inherently like avoidant? Because one of the things that characteristics of an avoidant is like they're independent, they value the self over others,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with a lot of men, I think like sometimes, because my attachment style is mostly anxious, but sometimes I also see
Yeah.
avoidant, because like sometimes I'm like afraid to show emotion.
I'm afraid to I'm afraid to be a little bit more deep.
Yeah, I'm afraid to be vulnerable, right? And I
Yes,
feel like
yes,
that's
yes,
just like
yes.
that's such like every guy I talk to is just like it's common. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, what are you guys saying? Is it like do all guys like
I
have that?
think-
Is like a men trait?
Yes, but I think it's a learned behavior.
Yeah, it's a learned behavior because I think it really comes down to like if you think about your upbringing and you think about like because it's very weird, like we call it mommy issues and daddy issues, right?
Yeah.
I'm very much like a mommy issue person, but I also feel like seeing like my dad grow up and not like kind of like repressing that emotion because we are like first generation. Is it first generation? No, we're second generation immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Well,
First
Vinny's
generation.
first.
I'm first generation.
Well,
yeah.
first or second. So we're children of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We
and-
get you. We get you.
Yeah, and it's like how they're taught is because I think I remember Jason explaining that pyramid where it's like you have your like wants
Basic
and then
needs,
you,
yeah.
So biological needs, psychological needs, and self-fulfillment needs.
yeah, self-fulfillment, and it's like they only ever really fulfilled that first like bottom triangle.
Maybe some of the second.
Maybe some of the second, like halfway, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny because I talk to all my Filipino friends or just my friends of immigrants, and they're always like, yo, like, they always talk about like how like their parents don't believe in mental health,
Yeah.
and like,
Oh, yeah.
it's
They
it's a
don't.
crazy, it's funny to say because
It's
we're like,
crazy.
yo, our parents too, but it's also kind of sad.
It's sad.
because it's like,
But it's funny though.
no, but it's funny. but it's also kind of sad because it's like if they had if they had just at least that second triangle, I think that third piece, like that self fulfillment, will be a lot easier to find.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like going back to like us as men or even just children of immigrants in general, like it even applies to some like women as well. It's hard for us to be a little bit more vulnerable, just because like we're shown to repress our emotions and we're shown to just like thug it out because it's like
Yeah.
it's not important. It's not more important than what your needs are. But again, like going back to that triangle, we need all three parts to like
Yeah.
be healthy
Fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah.
and fulfilled, right? So
These are needs, not
Yeah.
not add-ons.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think like I think specifically pertaining to us four dudes, a lot of our like immigrant dads just never showed emotion, and so
Yeah.
that's why we're also
It's-
very reluctant to show that and be vulnerable. Like I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast. I've only ever seen my dad cry like once, and then and I also I just thought of this. I also think that like but more often than not, a lot of people who are kind of like a little bit more broken and a little bit less like open to expressing those emotions, they're more resort to anger because that's all they really saw from their parents. Like,
Oh, I learned about that in one of my lectures. I was like, so I can't remember, but there's something about like strong emotions and soft emotions, or like, so crying and anger are usually strong emotions, and so
Yes,
a lot of
yes.
times when someone's crying, it's very easy for them to switch into anger, and when they're angry, it's a lot easier to switch to crying. There was like, hopefully I can fucking source this and I'm not talking on my asshole. But the idea was that like these emotions are very like similar in how like they're strong emotions,
Yeah.
so it's easy to switch between these two, right?
yeah.
So you're not gonna switch between anger and like haha, right? That's like it's
I think even from personal experience, it's true.
yeah,
Like,
right.
It's
And-
easier to cry. It's easier to be angry and then cry after, or it's easier to cry and then get angry after.
Yeah, it's such a like a normal thing, right?
Yeah.
So like when you are telling men to like not cry, and there's no other outlet for emotion, do you not see how that emotion can be illicit? Again, not to say that we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice.
We have choices,
Yes.
but if you're trying to help someone regulate so they're not harm to society, do you not see the moral implications of trying to let someone regulate emotions?
Yeah.
Like
Again, it's a back to the self-fulfilling prophecy of all you know is anger. Obviously, that choice is going to be lit up in bright neon lights in your head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's a path of least resistance. Like,
Yeah.
because with anger, like if you've already learned it from a young age, I'll be like, yeah, like I can go to this works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I'm just gonna go to it anyway. Instead of like learning, I can channel my emotion another way, but that takes energy. That takes time, to learn that behavior. So jump in.
I was really thinking about this. So Can you repeat the question again, sorry?
So essentially,
I was like, I was talking.
Essentially, our spitball right now
Yeah.
is like, why is it so hard for men to be vulnerable?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things. I don't want to sound like this is like a very cliche thing, but like, obviously, like society, you know. Like,
Yeah.
that's a-
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a valid.
That's like such a vague thing to say, but yeah, society. Like,
I
I
think
feel
it's true.
it is.
No, it's
it
true.
is,
It's true to
I
some
mean,
extent. Yeah.
It's true to some extent. I feel like us even like showing somewhat of emotion or just kind of displaying, regardless of what emotion it is. I feel like more so crying and anger just kind of like shows us as like weak as men.
Weak.
Yeah.
Weak as men, especially.
We're expected
Especially
to be
crying.
stoic.
More so crying.
Yeah.
Than anything. It kind of shows like weird. I don't know what it is. People say it's like feminine traits, and you're acting like a woman.
Because we're like a little bit more desensitized. Like, have you ever been like, if you ever think of like media, like you scrolling TikTok or Instagram, like people always play like off men crying as like a funny thing.
Yeah.
Like we use humor to kind of shield the fact that we're actually.
You also see a lot of
vulnerable.
men
It's
dying on media compared to women
Yeah,
dying.
exactly.
I don't know if that's just me, but like
Yeah.
even in movies, it's so much easier to see dudes dying than see women and children dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a lot more powerful to see a woman cry in media than it is for like a man. And it might not be true for some people, but just in my
Yeah.
perspective, like I think it's a lot more normalized to see women cry in media than it is
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
men. Because it's like if you see men cry in media, it portrays them as like obviously like people automatically think, oh, they're weak, they're vulnerable, they're like not like a quote unquote alpha male or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people in media just kind of like are like, oh shit, like men shouldn't cry, but they only cry when like literally the only time I've ever seen men cry in a movie is if they've lost their family. Like
Yeah.
legitimately, like I think of like on media, like I was watching The Incredibles the other day, and Mr. Incredible thought he lost his whole ass family, and literally he starts sobbing in the movie, and I'm like, damn, like that's the only time you ever think of like men crying, and like and then I thought about it like during this talk, and I'm like, wow,
It affects your behavior,
Yeah, like-
or your attitude
Yeah,
towards.
like-
Yeah, no.
like now I genuinely think the only time I should ever cry is like if a family member dies,
Yeah.
right? It's just like.
And a lot of people kind of don't really like, oh no, like I'm not that influenced by the environment around. Like, no, you are
You
product
are.
of the environment. Again, not to say we don't have any choices, but like a lot of times our choices are dictated. Like for example, if you believe the Earth is flat, are you gonna fly all the way to the left side of the world?
How?
No, right? But if you believe the world is round, you don't give a fuck, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's like, and again, maybe like a religion analogy where it's like, is a child Christian because he chose to be Christian, or because you only put him in a Christian community and he's not like never challenged the way he thinks. You always just put him in there and like you never, you never challenge the way like he thinks, right? Even using Andrew Tate for example, like you know he chose to say those things about women. He chose to harm women and to like you know endanger them. However, imagine this. Imagine if Andrew Tate was not raised in I think Romania. I don't know where. Romania. It doesn't have to be Canada or America. It can be anywhere else. Imagine he grew up with a feminist mother, maybe like a feminist father. Maybe he learned about equality. He's always like his family believed in equality. His group taught him about compassion. Do you think he would have been different, or did he choose to be a bad person again? And this is a question that's obviously very difficult to answer, right? Of like,
Yeah, because you're never gonna know.
yeah,
Like,
how much agency do we actually have as human beings, right? And then there's a whole argument of like, oh, do we force someone to think a certain way, or do we allow freedom and the whole freedom versus peace and
yeah,
and
it's
shit?
whole kind of worms.
My hand, the world isn't right.
Because when I say this, like I think a lot of people are like, oh, you're trying to invoke compassion for Mr. Tate. You're trying to justify his behavior. You're trying to see that he's a redeemable person. Like, no, I'm just saying be a little more critical of how people actually come into this world and how they behave.
Yeah.
Like you,
Yeah.
I get it.
honestly, like studying human behavior my whole life. I'm obviously having this conversation with dumb fucks.
It's tough. It's tough.
It's so infuriating.
Like drop like the Sims, bro. Like you drop like you name
The Sims?
Sim Andrew Tate, bro, and you put him in like what he grew up in, and then you put in a parallel world, you drop Andrew Tate into the world that you're kind of like the situation that you're describing. Like
They're gonna turn out
this-
different.
The Andrew Tates are gonna turn out different. Obviously, like he still don't have the same physical characteristics, and obviously like still like those brain pathways, like the super scientific part of it.
Yeah, of course,
The
of
actual
course.
like genuine DNA and like stuff like that, and like and then it becomes like a situation of like nature versus nurture, right? But anyways, like obviously some of those like brain pathways are gonna be the same, right? He's still gonna come to kind of the same type of like.
Maybe he gets
Still-
endorphins from boxing. Maybe
yeah,
he still gets endorphins from
yeah,
boxing. So he loves boxing.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like maybe he's just like his body's built for boxing, so he's still gonna be in MMA. But like because he was nurtured a specific way, maybe he like thinks differently about some things, right? I also think that like just not necessarily the question, but the topic. I think to spitball off of this is because we were talking about a lot about influences, right? I do think that, and I was also again reading the article, and they were listing the reasons why a person could be an anxious attachment type or an avoidant attachment type, and I think that like it was funny because it's like if you have an avoidant parent, I think that like most likely you're gonna create an anxious kid because they're gonna constantly
I
think
want that
it's
love,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
From experience.
And so I think from experience, right? Like I think that like my parents is like attachment style is very like my dad's very anxious, so like I obviously take like
You model that
like,
behavior.
the model that
Yeah.
behavior,
Yeah.
but also like that behavior is nurtured through my mom because my mom's a very like avoidant like attachment style.
Yeah.
Like, she's very like independent. Like she doesn't let anyone in her circle, and she doesn't. It's very hard for her to like
Open
just
up.
kind of like open up. And so like for me, like I understand that like that is a result of like my upbringing. You know what I mean? And not to like diagnose my mom or my dad, but it's just the traits and qualities that I've read and researched that I see mostly in my parents. Like obviously they're gonna fall into different categories in different situations, but I think in general, like I think avoidant like an avoidant parent figure is going to create an anxious child. And like I think that like growing up as an anxious person, I think I tend to also very much avoid like avoidant like attachment style people because it's just like I don't want
Yeah, you don't want to deal with that again.
I don't want to deal with that again, right? I already deal
Yeah.
with it at home enough, right? So it's like
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, because you want something that doesn't remind you of that pain. Kind
yeah,
of thing,
yeah,
or like that.
the negativity, the connotation.
Yeah, that experience. No, it's like it's great.
Yeah.
Final words.
Any final words?
Yes, sir.
I mean, nothing much. I mean, honestly, I feel like we touched bases on all this stuff.
Yeah.
The king is back.
Green flags.
Green flags. Red flags.
We need to touch on.
Yeah, even stuff we didn't need to touch on. Yeah. Shout out to Patreon. Like, I mean, green flags, man. Like, green flag events, like, green Filipinos, green flag.
Oh, true. It is a green flag.
Facts. Filipinos.
Shout out to my
Green flag.
Filipinos, bro.
Like,
Shout
shout
out.
out to Longanisa and all that shit.
Synagogue,
I think last like words is I think your attachment style isn't the end all be all
Yeah, it's not who
of
you
how
are.
you connect with people. You know what I mean? It's your love language. It's like it's literally you as a person, your hobbies and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think take your like knowing and acknowledging your attachment theory.
It's
is a very
good.
thing.
It's a good.
And obviously we all want to like be in that secure, like category.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think that we're very much a mix of a lot.
Yeah.
But one will always be prevalent. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and also understanding that like just because you're in another category doesn't mean you're a bad person.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a red. It's not a red flag by any means.
Yeah.
It just means you're a flawed person,
Which is
And we all are.
and we all are. And again, like if you are in this, because like I think attachment styles definitely does apply to romantic relationships the most. It can definitely apply to platonic. For
Oh,
sure.
it can definitely.
But I think it's a very important component of romantic, and I think that like just for my people who are in that kind of like dating meta, the Hinge, Tinder, whatever, the online dating meta, just be a little bit more open to like and be a little bit more receptive of people and kind of understanding if they are avoidant, anxious, or disorganized. And if you yourself think you're secure, then like kind of question yourself in like ways that like you love. Like, yeah, sure, you may be secure in one aspect, but
Yeah.
think about like how you're being avoidant in others and how you can kind of improve that and be a little bit more flexible and open again, like we said. Yeah. Because like I think that it's really tough. It's really lonely. I've been there. I still am low key, but it gets better when you finally understand these things because you start to create more genuine relationships rather than just one that's just on face value where you both think you're secure, but in actuality you guys are like the least compatible in like attachment wise, or rather not compatible, because I do think that there's a compatibility with any of these four. You guys just don't have this. You guys don't have the tools and the knowledge to really deal with that. So
Yeah.
All right, and I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys for joining us.
thank you.
What is this, episode 16?
16.
16. Sweet 16.
Sweet 16.
We missed the
Sir.
quinceañera.
Oh,
Fuck.
But yeah, have a good night, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. I
See
love
next
you.
episode.
Peace,
Love
peace.
you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks to Gemma for being our special
Oh,
guest.
thank you.
Yeah, Gemma.
The king is back. The king is, oh my god.
That's the outro. That's the outro music. Sexual chocolate.
Let's go.
The king is back. The
Chocolate
king
rain
is
with a
back.
guy like this.
Also, if your ass is fat and you believe in astrology, don't worry, I'll protect your peace.
Oh my god. Okay, that's a wrap. That's a wrap.